And now, the Little Italy of Los Angeles podcast with Deborah Zara-Cobelt.
Hi, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us today for our Little Italy of Los Angeles podcast. I'm Deborah Zara-Cobelt. I saw a wonderful film this weekend, Sicily, Land of Love and Strife. And I'm fortunate enough to have the writer, the director, and the producer of that film here with us today, Mark Spano. Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Good to see you, Deborah.
Oh, what a beautiful film. I mean, considering that I can't exactly take a flight to Sicily right now, how magical that I was able to see this film. I was very enthralled with it. I thank you very much for making it. I really brought me in. You know, it was just tremendous.
Thank you so much. Well, and at this time, the film is that. It's even that for me, actually. I can't go to Sicily right now, but I can look at the pictures. I can see the film that I made, and that's kind of go ahead.
Yeah, well, there are so many wonderful parts of this film because as I was looking at it, I was taking little notes. You spoke of the history, right, of Sicily. You went into, you know, that volcano that we all know about, that very famous volcano. You talked about the pottery, the food, the pastries. And then you went into different communities and you went into the pastry shops, the puppets and the puppeteers, the mandolin players. That was wonderful as well. The Sicilian cart painter. That one really got to me. You actually highlighted a Sicilian cart painter. And essentially what you did was you really got to the heart of what Sicily is all about. It's the people and it's the culture and the history and tradition. It's just beautiful.
It's the people. That's well. And then, of course, for the rest of us, you know, yes, it's the people, but when you're Italian, especially Sicilian, it's the food and the music and the wine, you know, and the sheer beauty of the place. That part, you just look in any direction in Sicily, and there's sky and mountains and sea. It's pretty remarkable.
Let's talk a little bit about the history of Sicily for people who might not know, right? I mean, it was an area, region, just by the way it's set up, that you had people coming in from Greece, people coming over from Africa, Morocco, and Spain, and northern parts of Italy before it was even Italy, right? I mean, it's sort of a bit of a melting pot in Sicily, is it not?
Well, I say about Sicily that Sicily had what we could call enforced diversity. It was this island on the Mediterranean, and if you commanded Sicily, you commanded the Mediterranean. So everybody came to Sicily. They didn't always come to Sicily to visit. They were quite frequently invaders and faced off the last invader, and then he became the bad guy, and then the good guys were the new invader in town. So Sicily had to incorporate change constantly. Sicily had to live with foreigners continually. Sicily, in pre-Christian days, had many religious changes. It had what we would consider Greek paganism. It had Islam, Christianity. It had I'm not thinking of it right now.
No, I know what you mean. It was, as you called it very, very successfully, it was a melting pot of all those different cultures, right? And traditions. You could even see it in some of the architecture there, right? It was very, there's no doubt. Go ahead.
In an island like Ortigia, Ortigia is a tiny island attached to the town of Siracusa. You could see the history of the world in the architecture of that tiny little island, just walking from place to place, because every influence, every Baroque influence, of course, which was very strong there, and the Greeks and the Arabic and the Romans, and you name it, it's all there. And it makes Sicily very different than most of the places in Europe. It's not quite completely Europe, Sicily.
Well, how? Go ahead.
a little more than Europe. Go ahead.
How long has it been a part of Italy? Again, for those who don't know quite about the history of Sicily and the island there.
Okay, the Risorgimento really was in the 60s and kind of came to the Republic with the 1860s. So the United States of America is older than the country of Italy. And during Sicily's life, Sicily's been part of North Africa. It's been part of Greece. It's been part of Anjou, which was part of France before France was all France. It's been part of a great many other countries, Austria, Spain, and for the longest time, Spain. It was even part of Spain when some of the Americans who are here left. It was probably, we had immigrants to the United States before the unification.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So your name is Spano, right? Your family is from Palermo, your grandparents from Palermo and Puglia, and you grew up in Kansas City. In fact, your grandparents had a produce market right in downtown Kansas City. Tell me a little bit about how you were influenced by them and your great interest in Sicily and all things Italian.
Well, that's my grandparents came from the market in Palermo called Vucceria. And Vucceria is my favorite market in Palermo because it's where my grandparents came from. And it's also
familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also the oldest. The expression Vucceria comes from the French boucherie, actually, and kind of breadbasket. And it was, so it's been there an awfully long time. I mean, it's a medieval place. But my grandpa Spano and my grandma Spano, whose maiden name was Inzarello, both of those names are real prominent in that part of Palermo. And they're pretty common names, actually. I walk around there and I met all kinds of people with my family names. And we're not sure if we're related, but the great thing about Sicily is they accept you immediately as part of the family. But go ahead.
That's what you were saying in your film. You show up, and so many of the people that you interviewed, let's talk about that a little bit. Your film talks about the beautiful geography and the region, but you did so many wonderful interviews with people there. And the one thing that I got from this is you can come as a visitor, but now you are part of Sicily. You belong there, even as a visitor for a short amount of time. And the people really make you feel at home and welcome, right?
That is absolutely the truth. I mean, we had so much cooperation, so much being looked after by folks as soon as we got to a town and explained what we were doing. And everybody was very engaged and welcoming. And that I loved that.
Yeah. And do you still have family over there as well? Obviously that I
know my Pugliese family. I have not found my Sicilian family in Sicily yet. And yes, it's something I'm going to do. And I keep saying I'm going to do it, but I haven't done it yet.
Please do it. I did it not long ago. And they were all related. Clearly, they're the descendants of like my grandparents, right? Like their siblings and then their kids and their grandkids and and I found them all. And they were so welcoming to me. And the moment that they met us and my family at the hotel, because we had arranged it, I felt as though I had known them immediately. And I think it was very mutual. It's a beautiful experience. Please don't, take any more time. Just do it, because it's an experience like none other. And after the film that you just did, gosh, I mean, it's in your heart, that place,
It's in my heart. There's no question that the place is in my heart. And it's kind of in my heart in spite of me in some ways. I didn't know what Sicily was. My grandparents, I would ask my grandparents, my great uncles and aunts, what was it like? What did you do? Oh, you don't want to know. Oh, you don't want to know. Well, they were
I
very.
used to hear that too. You don't want to know. It's like, why don't I want to know? What happened? Tell me
Well,
why
but
they
I
said
did
that.
want to know.
Yeah.
And so finally, I got a cousin of mine. I had to fly back to Kansas City, and because of my father's health, this was many years ago. And I sat down with a cousin of mine, and we talked about. And these are cousins actually who are still in the grocery and produce business. And I sat down with the eldest. She's long gone now, but I asked her many questions, and she gave me the information about the market, about Buccetti, and about relatives on her husband's side who were from Monreale, very near Palermo. And so I kind of had a sense of this is where my people are from. My people are from the western part of that island, kind of the northwestern part of the island. And once I got for the first time to the northwestern part of the island, I saw my name everywhere. So I figured some of them have to be relatives.
They've got to be relatives. You just start asking people. It's funny. My father's name is or was Anthony Zara. So as we were walking around the streets of Malocasati and San Barbato, it's in the Avellino region, we were walking around with my cousins and they said, oh, that's Anthony Zara. And, oh, that's the Anthony Zara. I said, wait, what's going on? They said, they just named them after their uncles and relatives. And, you just pass down the names. So there were lots of Zaras because that's my maiden name. And same with you, right? You're lots of Spanos.
Yeah.
Right. All over. How that's kind of exciting. And you feel like, gosh, you've got to be a relative somehow, right? It's an exciting thing.
Well, my Spano grandfather was a very tall guy. Mm-hmm. He was 6'4", and 6'4" in Sicily is kind of an exception.
A standout.
And so we think, principally because of the height, that he probably had some Spanish blood, because there certainly were a lot of Spaniards in that part of Sicily, and they were tall. Spaniards were tall. Certainly in European history, they were taller than what we think of as Sicilians. So,
right. Interesting. Have you done your DNA?
I mean, you walk down the street in Palermo and people have freckles, they have red hair, they're blonde, they're blue-eyed, they're dark, they're short, they're skinny, they're tall, all of it.
They're everything.
They're everything, yeah.
I love what you wrote. You said Palermo, where the dog, the cat, and the mouse walk together. What a great line.
Actually, you know who said that in my film is Leo Luca Orlando, the mayor of Palermo. And he's a lovely guy. He really is sort of the philosopher spokesperson for Palermo and for Sicily. He was so warm and talking about the kind of cultural change that he felt was necessary there in order for Sicily to become a more modern economy. So many young Sicilian people, many of my friends, they have to leave because there's no work for them.
Now, still, and I mean, primarily it's tourism, right? And now a lot of people most people can't go there at the moment, although I imagine Europeans can go. I'm not quite sure what's been lifted there in terms of travel and vacation, but that's got to be very tough for them. Very, very difficult, because you're right. It's a region it's cut off. And how do many of the people make their money there other than the tourism? Is it farming or what is it?
Well, it's a very agricultural, it's still, a very agricultural place, but it also, the main cities in Sicily have really pretty good universities. So Sicily prepares a lot of engineers, mathematicians, computer programmers, and scientific folks who end up going to find jobs in the north of Italy or other countries in the EU, like Belgium or just different places, Holland, that I have friends who have moved out. And I think, and I talk a lot about people wanting to stay where they were born. That I think is one of the real challenges in Sicily, is to create a stable climate for real business, for a real job market. A tourist economy is exciting, it's good, but it isn't going to do what we all need. I mean, a lot of young people I know, if they want to stay, they have to hold 3 jobs, or they have to do things on the side, like be able to do car repairs or something like that. I have a lot of friends that have all these ways of putting it together to create a livelihood. They don't have just one job like we think of.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting, because those of us who travel and visit there, clearly it's very different than when you live there day to day. So you're right. Then there's the reality of living in a place like Sicily with great pride, though. And what I loved most and got the most of your film was, no matter which region you traveled to, the great pride and how people wanted to speak to you and wanted to talk to you about who they are and where they came from. What did you get most out of making this film, and how long did it take you to make it?
Oh, wow. What did I get most out of it? Well, it has been a significant milestone, I would say, in my life.
Beautiful.
I decided to make the film in 2010. I started writing and reading and making regular trips in 2011. We started shooting in 2015. We finished in about 17, and the film got released in 18.
Right, and to great reviews, and it's played at various film festivals, which is wonderful.
Actually, the most exciting, I really feel, the Toronto Italian Film Festival. They screened it in Hamilton, which was pretty good, because Hamilton has this huge population of Sicilian people, and when you've got a house full of Sicilian people, people who were born in Sicily, they're the baby boom in that Sicilian community in Hamilton were small children and were born in Sicily and came over then. They were my age as baby boomers, but they were born in Sicily, where, that generation is it's usually a grandparent generation that's looked back to in the States here to say who was born in Sicily. There are some, certainly, but the big immigration into the United States would be the grandparents of the baby boom.
Yeah, so go ahead, sorry.
Well, you talk about how did this affect me? What did I get from it? So much. It's informed my identity in ways I didn't know that it could, that things you didn't quite understand about your people and about life.
Made sense. Suddenly made sense, right? Yeah.
Goethe says Sicily is the clue, and that's for sure. Sicily is the clue. If you want to know about Italy, he says Sicily's the clue. You learn Sicily, you know Italy. And Lampedusa says in The Leopard that, he talks about the Sicilian personality, and that how we have this sort of profound sense of self and sense of even how we look when we walk down the street, and we live in an Anglo-Saxon culture, or it's certainly changing now. But when I was a kid, we were basically living in what was a British heritage, and that concern with presentation of oneself was kind of poo-pooed, you know. We went to Catholic schools, many of us, and many of we had sort of an Irish upbringing in some respects in our Catholic schools, and that sort of Sicilian peacockery, that Sicilian wanting to present oneself was frowned upon, and after being in Sicily, I don't have any conflict about that anymore. I understand it very well.
Well, I think, because I can see the evolution of what happened. You know, those who came here early in the 1900s, there's so much poverty in that whole region in Europe.
Oh, yeah.
And they came, we all know that, right? And they came here and they said, you're American now. So they raised people like, you know, my parents, and they were like, they just taught us to be, you know, American kids. But now that we have been through that, and now that we've been back to the country where we all came from, we think, well, wait a minute. Now this makes sense, right? We understand where we came from, but we weren't necessarily taught that, you know. And I'm making sure that I teach that to my kids. It's like, hey, look, this is where you're from, and
it was legitimate. It was legitimate. My experience growing up in Kansas City was vastly different than my friends from New York and Philadelphia and New Jersey and Connecticut and places like that, where there were these big, tight Italian communities. We had a tight community, but in order to mainstream educationally, professionally, one really had to sort of play down one's Italianness.
Oh, there is no doubt about it. My parents really played it down, and I often wondered why. But you learn why once you go back and you see where they came from. It's perspective.
Said to me, "You don't have to speak Italian. You're in the United States. You speak English."
I know.
Well, you know, I really wish I spoke. I understand a little bit. I can speak just a wee bit.
Poco.
Yeah, but I really wish I had a better grasp of Italian. And that could have happened. And there was a fear that we weren't going to make it if we identified too strongly as Italians. We had to identify strongly as Americans in order to mainstream into careers, higher education, etc. You know.
Right, but a film like yours takes us back, right? It's almost like it goes back full circle, right? You take us back to the history and the tradition of Sicily, why it is what it is, and what it means to us and your generation, my kids' generation, and how to now connect all of that, which is what was so beautiful about this film. You really just brought me in. I wanted to get on a plane immediately, and it's too bad that I couldn't. And we can't at the moment, but I will. I mean, it may just be the first place I go after seeing this film. Go ahead.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Then I've done my job.
Oh, no, you've done your job. I've had many people watch it since. It was very captivating.
Oh,
in fact, I came to you by way of our councilman here, Councilman Joe Busciano, who saw it with his son, and he said, we've got to get this guy on. I mean, you know that, right? That's how.
Joe saw it, and he called me.
Right.
And he said, let's set something up. I want you to come to LA. And I said, I want to come to LA. And we were making plans. And in the middle of our plans, we had COVID-19. So
he's done such tremendous work there in Little Italy of Los Angeles, down in San Pedro. You'll come back because you're now a part of our community down there, right? With your film. Maybe we'll show your film there. But yeah, that's too bad. But
well, no, I'm very much. I have a couple of others. I think in White Plains, there's a group in White Plains, New York, that I would really. I have some family there. Actually, most of them are gone, but I did have family there, and I really want to get to White Plains and to a few other places, and we're going to do that as soon as we can all travel.
Yeah. So you've done quite a few films. You've also done a very well-known book, The Midland Club. I love this. It describes you as a kid where you grew up and as a teen and how you ended up getting into film. You started in an audio visual department, I believe, at school, or your first job.
Actually, when I was an undergraduate at Georgetown University, this is a long story, but I'll try to make it short. I was very interested in films, and I got a job in the audiovisual department at the library, Lounger Library there. I still have friends from the time of that job, which it was
great.
in 1972, I think, which was quite a while ago. And I've never left the audiovisual department. I've done a few things. I've done, some advertising work and fundraising and so forth, but I've always come back to film and television. I've always come back to writing. And that's the
story of the book. It's a wonderful book. I'm going to urge people to pick that up.
The story of Midland Club is the story is a story that is fiction that takes place in the town that I grew up in.
Right.
In the Kansas City of the late 1950s. I was a small kid, about 8 years old at the time I set the film. Mark Twain, and I've got a bunch of. I've completed another book about that called Veronica's Veil, and I'm working on a third, all set in that same thing. And Mark Twain once said, "The longer I live, the better I remember things that never happened."
I'll remember that.
And that's kind of my fiction writing, is that I can call upon the neighborhood, so to speak, pretty easily in my imagination. So I use it for the books that I write. And then the stories I kind of piece together, but not all of the things that are in the stories actually happened, but a lot of it did.
Mark, you're a wonderful artist, wonderful filmmaker, writer, producer, director. I mean, you're an artist. That's what you are. And I'm going to implore people, please, to get this film, to watch this film. It was very, very special. And if you've been to Sicily, it would have a different meaning than if you've never been to Sicily. Sicily, land of love and strife. There's so much to learn from this, whether it's the historical perspective or the many, many interviews that you did. You even touched a little bit on the history of the mob there. But it was
you can't talk about Sicily without talking about the mob. But
I know, right?
But it's not the only subject.
No, it's just you just touched upon it a little bit, and
1,000 years of culture.
Yeah.
You can't just brush that aside and just say, the mafia is the only subject. It certainly is not. My laptop is falling off.
That's okay, because we have to go anyway, but I enjoyed very much talking to you. It was very interesting, and I learned quite a bit. And that pastry scene, that scene where they were making the pastries and that small little pastry stop, that's staying with me. That Sicilian cart painter, for people who don't even know what I'm talking about, just get the film, because that really had an impression on me. Of course, the fashion, that was amazing, and all the different regions that you traveled to. It was just a delightful film.
It was 102.
Unbelievable. He was lovely. I loved.
And he said to me about his son, he says, I have to take care of my son. I think his son was in his 80s, right? His son was 85. He says, I have to take care of my son. He says, because he's old.
Oh my God, I love that, right? I love that. That's so true. He did say that. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us.
My pleasure, Deborah.
How can people find the film? I know how we got it, but
how
else?
Sicily, Land of Love and Strife is on Amazon. It's available on DVD. It's available on Prime for streaming. The book, Midland Club, is available on Amazon.com. Midland Club by Mark Spano.
And people can reach you on all social medias too, right?
Just by your name? Pretty much. I'm everywhere.
Okay,
just about.
Beautiful. But thank you. I enjoyed talking to you.
Google me. I'm easy to find.
You are very easy to find because you've had a very distinguished career, Mark. And by the way, I love that, now from Kansas City and all the work you've done in Italy, now you live sort of way out in a rural country, right? In the Carolinas.
I live in the middle
love
of
that.
nowhere. Yes.
In the middle of nowhere, just to get a little peace and quiet so that you can think for your next project.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for the Little Italy of Los Angeles podcast. We love bringing these to you. It's always so much fun to talk about all the different work that so many Italians are doing, Italian Americans and all sorts of folks. And please come down and visit us at San Pedro, where Little Italy is located down in Los Angeles. We've got lots of great restaurants and events that should be happening soon once we're able to meet again around the piazza. In the meantime, thank you very much for joining us. I'm Deborah Zara Cobelt, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.